Now we will understand what are some of the factors which impact fertility rate. The factors impacting fertility rate can be again divided into different types. For example, some factors might be cultural factors, some factors can be social factors, some factors can be economic factors, some factors can also be policy or political or administrative related factors. So we look at all these angles. What are these different factors? Now, one major cultural factor that impacts fertility rate is role of religion. See, most of the religions they will glorify the birth of a child. Generally, it is said children are the gift of God. So if someone is religious, someone is more religiously inclined, so among them fertility rates can be high. Generally, children are referred to as a gift of God. Social factors include institutions like joint family. In joint families, higher chances of high fertility rate. Now, what could be the reason for this? Let's think about a nuclear family, husband and wife, they are there. How will they be able to manage if they are having 4-5 kids? In joint family, at any point of time, there will be a kinship system, kinship structure, which can help in bringing up the children. Some support network is there. The grandparents will be there, uncle, aunts, they will be there. But the same thing is not applicable in nuclear families. So generally, joint families, they are more conducive for having higher fertility rate. Child marriages can be another social factor. You can also include it as a cultural factor because of cultural reasons child marriages prevail. In case child marriages are prevalent, it can also lead to high fertility rates. How? See, when a female is getting married at a very young age, the total duration in which sexual relations will be there between husband and wife that also increases. So can lead to high fertility rate. The next important factor which has an implication on fertility rate is son preference. Now this is again a social factor as well as a cultural factor. In case of Indian society specifically, there is a preference for having a male child. Cultural factor why I'm saying this? Because sometimes some religious practices, some kind of practices which have as per the religion are carried out by the male child. For example, the funeral pyre is generally led by the male child among Hindus. The last rites are generally carried by the male child among Hindus. So that way we can say it's a cultural factor. That is the reason sometimes parents prefer to have a male child. But it can also be an economic factor. Traditionally, Indian society was an agrarian society. Now also large part of population is agriculture. In agrarian economy, more the number of helping hands, more is the benefit. So that is the reason they prefer to have more number of sons, more help in the agriculture. You might say that why women could also participate in agriculture, but one thing you should remember that in case of India, generally we have a agricultural society. Women after marriage they move to their husband's place. That way, percentage also raised. So preference for male child, because of that also fertility rates increase. How having preference for male child impacts fertility rate. Now what happens? How this thing is carried out, son preference. Either by going for sex-related abortion or the other way is going for multiple pregnancies. There are families which might have a female child, so they will go for another child, hoping that they might have a male child. It might happen that again a girl child is born, they will go for a third child. It might happen that a girl is again born, they might go for a fourth child. So that way what is happening is the female is now giving birth to so many children and fertility rate increases. So son preference also leads to increasing fertility rate. Apart from that, another social factor, in case of Indian society, there is this stigma that if a female is not able to bear kids, if she is tried for some reason, then she is not given due status in society. So it is taken for granted that you should have kids. Stigma is associated if you are not able to bear kids. And again, there is also stigma if you are not able to bear kids, bear children. Apart from that, another reason for high fertility rate is the low status of women. As the condition of women is not that good in society, they do not have a very good say when it comes to decision making and decisions which impact their health. Decisions which impact their future. In those decisions also they do not have sufficient amount of say. And again, most of the women they are not working outside, they do not dependent on their male counterparts. So they have to accept what their male counterparts or the family members they decide. So low status of women also can have very much fertility rates. Apart from that, another major factor for high fertility rate is high infant mortality rate and child mortality rate. How high infant mortality rate, how high child mortality rate leads to high fertility rates. Now, if infant mortality rates are high, that means child survival rate is low. If child mortality rates are high, that means child survival rate is low. That indirectly means that if a certain number of children are born, many of them might not survive. So that is the reason the parents will want to hedge against that risk. They would rather go for more number of children. So even if some of the children do not survive, some will survive. So high infant mortality rate, high child mortality rate leads to high fertility rates. Keep this in mind. Next factor. Sometimes families they consider children as source of income. More the number of children, more the helping hands, especially in case of agrarian economy. Apart from that, we do not have proper provisions for pension. Sometimes parents go for more number of children because they feel that these children will support them during their old age. So lack of financial support, lack of different pension policies, that also leads to high number of children. Apart from that, there are some policy issues. For example, our family planning programs, our population control programs, they were not very successful. It also led to high fertility rates. So all these factors have a bearing on fertility rate. But the next question here, if there is high fertility rate, if a woman is bearing more number of children, what are the implications? Now, if fertility rates are high, how it is going to impact the woman herself? Now, if a female is having more number of children, that means she is spending a large duration of her life in childbearing and childbearing activities. So she will not be able to participate in the labor force. It becomes difficult for her to participate in the labor force. So her own development, her own self-expression, all these things get impacted. She becomes dependent on someone. Apart from this, it also impacts her health. Every pregnancy comes with a cost. It impacts the health of the mother. It involves some sort of physical strain, emotional strain. Both the kinds of strains are there. So the physical as well as the mental health of the female gets impacted. Apart from this, if more number of children are there in the family, it impacts the primary breadwinner, the person who is the main breadwinner for the family. There is more constraints or there is more burden on that individual. There is more financial burden on the individual. Sometimes it can also lead to alcoholism, which can again lead to domestic violence. Those kind of correlations are also there. Apart from this, the children, how they are impacted. If a family has a lot of children, they will not get love, affection. If there are a lot of children in a family, the children will be neglected. They will not be provided sufficient love, affection. And sometimes, if a family is not doing well, if already they are poor, so there are a lot of children, you do not have sufficient resources. So in such a scenario, the children might be asked to work outside, can lead to child labor. So all this can be the implications of high fertility rates. So we understood what is fertility rate, we understood the factors impacting fertility rate, and what can be the implications of fertility rate. Now what we will do, we look at some images, some illustrations, sometimes related to fertility rate, we can understand from these illustrations. Now the image that you see on the screen, it basically tells us about our fertility rates, how the fertility rates are varying in different parts of India. At present, our fertility rate is 2.3. It is said that we need to reach 2.1. 2.1 is said to be the replacement level. If you achieve replacement level, then the population becomes stabilized. In the illustration that you see, the states which are green in color, here already replacement level has been achieved. The states which are red in color, these are the states which are yet to achieve replacement level. So from this you can realize that the central part of India, Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Assam, northeast part of India, these are the states where replacement level has not been achieved. And just look at some of the states, Bihar 3.4, UP 3.1. So the fertility rates are quite high here. The other states, the fertility rates are quite less. West Bengal 1.6, Kerala 1.8, Tamil Nadu 1.7. So there is variation, there is geographic variation, regional variation when it comes to fertility rates. Apart from that, there is variation among different religious communities when it comes to fertility rates. Just look at the fertility rates among Muslims, green is Muslims, among Hindus it is yellow in color, among Christians and among Sikhs. Among all these social religious communities, the fertility rates are different. So these are data for National Family Health Survey 3. So this is the data for 2005-2006. So the old data is there. But again, this gives us a rough representation. So this first data is from around 1993, and the third data is from 2005-2006. What you can note here is the fertility rate among Muslims is higher than the fertility rate of Hindus, and the fertility rate among Hindus is higher than the fertility rate of Christians, which is again higher than Sikhs. So among different social religious communities, the Sikhs have the lowest fertility rate, but Muslims have the highest fertility rate. And all the phases are the same. Muslims continue to have the highest fertility rate. But what you can also observe here is the fertility rates are declining. The fertility rates of Muslims, what it was in 1992, it has a decline. It has declined by 2005-2006. Among all communities, there has been a decline. So this is a positive trend. Number of children born by a woman has decreased along all social religious communities. Overall fertility rate, if you look at the trend, In 1971, it was 5.2. So every woman in 1971 was having 5 kids. On an average, every woman was having 5 kids, more than 5 kids. But by 2016, it has become 2.3. So this is also one of the positive trends. And there have been some surveys which again find out the relationship between education and fertility rates. Blue is the data for 2005-2006. Women who have no schooling at all, among them fertility rate is 3.6. Women who have 8 to 9 years of schooling education, they have fertility rate of 2.2. Women who have more than 12 years of education, fertility rate is 1.8. The red data that you see, that is for 2015-16. So women who do not have any schooling, 3.1. Women who have some years of education, 8 years of education, 2.2. Women who have 12 plus years of education is 1.7. So with education, fertility rates are decreasing. And again, if you compare women without any education between 2005, 2016, there also there has been a decline in fertility rate. Similar kind of trends are observed. So with education, status of women is improving. If status of women improves, fertility rate decreases. So this is also a very interesting trend. So this is about birth rate and fertility rates. Now the next dimension, next component of population growth, death rate. Now death rate, again, it is also measured in different ways. We can use different parameters to understand death rate. For example, true death rate, that means total number of registered deaths in one particular year divided by mid-year population multiplied by 1000. So number of deaths taking place per 1000 population, that is true death rate. Another way of measuring this, or another way which also gives us some idea about death rate, expectation of life at birth. That means what is the average number of years a newborn is expected to live if mortality patterns at the time of its birth remains constant in future. So if you are born today, how many years you are going to survive for? Infant mortality rate, number of deaths per 1000 life births. For children who are under 1 year of age. So those who are in the age category 0 to 1 year, how many deaths are taking place per 1000 life births? Maternal mortality rate, another type of mortality measurement. Number of registered maternal deaths due to birth or pregnancy related complications per 1 lakh life births. So if 1 lakh life births are there, then how many death cases are there? How many pregnancy related complications, pregnancy related deaths are there? So all these are different measures, different types of death rates, and all these are measured at different points of time. Now we will look at some factors which have a bearing on death rate. What could lead to higher death rate? First thing, if health facilities are not good, specifically proper hospitals are not there, if deliveries do not take place in healthcare institutions, in that case, infant mortality rate as well as maternal mortality rate increases. If deliveries are not happening within healthcare institutions, high chances that infants will die, high chances that mother will also face some complication, they can be death. So infant mortality and maternal mortality will increase. If anyways access to healthcare is not proper, mortality rates are high. Sometimes cultural factors can also be there, which can lead to increase in death rates. What can be some example of cultural factors? For example, in some places, there are certain rumors, some misconceptions about usage of vaccines which could have saved life. So since there are these beliefs, that is the reason people do not take vaccines, people do not administer vaccines on their children, which can make them more, or which can put them at greater risk to different kinds of diseases, and it can also lead to high death rates. Sometimes discrimination can also lead to high death rates. Discrimination against the girl child, for example. In India, there is discrimination against the girl child. The girl child might not be provided adequate nutrition as compared to her, the male child. She will be provided less nutrition. If there is milk, sufficient milk is not there, and there are 2 children, high chances that the son will be provided milk, the girl might not be provided milk. So those kind of discrimination can be there, which can make certain sections of the population more vulnerable. Technology, again, if improvement is there in health technology, it can also decrease death rates. If scarcity of food is there, or food is not available, or food is not accessible, that can also lead to high death rates. Starvation itself, hunger can be there. And it is not only about availability but accessibility. Food might be available in the society, but whether you can access that food. If you're not able to access the food, again, starvation can be there. In recent times, example I had told you before as well, there was an instance in which someone was denied access to the different PDS facilities because Aadhaar card was not there. So here, food is available in the society, food was available in the PDS shop, that person was entitled to that amount of ration, but that particular document was not there, which prevented him or her from accessing food. So production, food availability, food accessibility, all these things can have a bearing, can lead to increase in death rate. What has been the trend in death rate in case of India? Now, we will see this in the graph as well. But in case of India, since 1921, death rates have been declining. There has been a fall in death rate. This graph will help us understand this better. Just look at it. From 48.6 to 7.4. Look at the decline in death rate, and this has been a consistent decline. Death rate here was high. If you remember, we discussed this when we were discussing the first topic, when we were discussing about population size growth. So I told you one thing, that during this period, there were plague and other epidemics, famine was also there, which led to massive number of people dying. 7% of the population was white. So death rates were high, but from that period onwards, death rate has consistently declined. And the decline in death rate has been more steep, more rapid as compared to the decline in birth rate. Remember, birth rate did not decline to this extent. So the number of deaths have declined more rapidly than the number of births. This particular illustration helps you understand both the dimensions. So the darker green shade that you see, green gray shade, that is basically the birth rate. So birth rate has changed like this, while the death rate has changed like this. So birth rate has not had a significant decline, while the death rate has changed more. So this is something you should realize. And we already discussed this before. Why death rate increases drastically? Death rate is more impacted by all these technological factors. Birth rate is more impacted by social cultural factors. Technological factor, material part of culture. Social cultural factor, non-material part of culture. Ideas, values, they don't change at a very fast rate. While technology changes at a very fast rate, adaptation of technology is also faster. So birth rate decline has been less, death rate decline has been faster, more rapid. Very important conclusion, and I have used these illustrations to help you understand better. You don't need to remember all these numbers, maybe a number here and a number here will be more than enough. Possibly you can make these diagrams as well. You don't need the exact numbers, you can just roughly you can quote these trends. So this is about death rate and this is about birth rate. Now we will take up another dimension, another component of changing population. We will be discussing about migration. So what is migration? How migration has been defined? Now migration is defined as permanent or semi-permanent change of residence. One definition. But some thinkers, they are of the view that migration is more or less permanent. So sometimes this is also stated. And migration is also one of the component of population change. Remember, we had discussed population can change through birth. More number of people are being added, it can change because of death. Population will decrease because of death. Migration also impacts population. If people are migrating to a particular region, population increases. If more people are migrating out from the region, population decreases. So migration decides the population of an area. It has some bearing on the population of an area. And migration plays an important role in distribution of population, growth of population, growth of labor force. If people migrate to a particular area in search of job, the size of the labor force will increase there. If people are migrating from one place to another, the distribution of population is also changing. Let's say this is the reality of India. If people from here keep on migrating to here, here the population will become less, here the population will become more. So the distribution of population will vary. So it also impacts distribution of population, it also impacts labor force. If people migrate from here to here, labor force increases here, labor force decreases here. So those kind of distributions are also impacted by migration. So this is the meaning of migration. Now next thing, what are the different types of migration? Migration can be of different types. Within India, within the national boundaries, if you see, there can be 4 types of migration. People can migrate from rural to rural areas. They're migrating from rural and going to urban areas. People can migrate from rural to urban areas. People can migrate from urban to urban areas. If you are in Delhi, you're migrating to Bangalore. If you are in Bombay, you're migrating to Calcutta. There can be migration from urban to rural areas. Sometimes this also happens. Some people might migrate back to rural areas. So 4 types of migrations can be there within the boundaries of a nation. Sometimes migration can also take place across international boundaries, across national boundaries. For example, there can be immigration, there can be emigration. Immigration means the act of entering into a foreign country to live. Emigration means the act of leaving one's country. So again, international migration, immigration, emigration, we can include it together. Sometimes migration can also be classified as long range or short range. If it's for longer duration, it's called long range migration. If it's for shorter range, it's called short range migration, shorter durations. Now, what are some features of migration in case of India? What kind of migration is more predominant in the context of India? We saw those four kinds of migrations: rural, rural, urban, 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 rural. What is the most predominant type of migration in case of India? Rural to rural migration is the most predominant types, and it can be due to multiple reasons. For example, in certain areas, in our country, there are certain regions in which agriculture is doing well. Capitalistic development of agriculture is happening. So into these regions, people from those areas where agriculture is not that developed can migrate. So from rural regions in Bihar, UP, people can migrate to rural regions of Punjab, Haryana. So that can be one reason why rural migration takes place. So rural to rural migration is most predominant among all these types of migration. But in recent times, rural to urban and urban to urban migration is also taking place. And again, one of the major reasons for migration to urban areas is employment. 28% of our population migrates every year, and mostly it is because of employment opportunities. If you look at rural to rural migration, here it is dominated by females. Females are the ones who are the larger participants here. Now, what could be the reason why females are migrating from rural to rural area? They're migrating because of marriage. We have petty local families, we have petty local families. At the same time, in many places, village exogamy is there. You should not marry within the same village. So people have to marry outside their village, and it involves migration. When it comes to rural to urban migration, here it is the males who are the major player. They are the ones who migrate more when it comes to rural to urban migration. Another important observation, another important finding: in which kind of situations an individual is more likely to migrate? See, if an individual already knows someone in the place he or she is willing to migrate, higher chances that person is going to migrate. Place A, place B, individual X, individual Y. So individual X has a friend Y in place B. Individual X is from place A. Individual Y is right now in place B. If X wants to migrate to B and Y is already there in B, X knows Y, highly likely X will migrate from A to B. So if you already know someone in the place you want to migrate, high chances you are going to migrate. So you are basically forming links. So this is a link being formed. Now since now X migrated to B, it might happen that X has some friends here. Maybe Z, E, S. So now since X is there in B, Y is there in D, S, they also might be willing to migrate to B. So this is called chain migration. You know someone over there, that's the reason you are trying to migrate. And once you go there, you will again be attracting some people in the place where you are originally staying. So these are some of the features of migration in case of India. Now we will try to understand what are some of the major factors which influence migration in case of India. Migrant winner lists out certain factors which lead to migration. For example, lack of employment, landlessness, poverty, political religious persecution. You are persecuted for your political views, you are persecuted for your religious views. Apart from that, man to land ratio, if it keeps on increasing, that means if the pressure on land keeps on increasing, more number of people on the same amount of land. For example, a father is having a land. Now, after his death, it will be divided among his sons. So the amount of land is not increasing. So if this keeps on happening, if more number of men on the same amount of land, if this ratio increases, again people are motivated to migrate away. They would want to migrate away from these regions, especially from the rural areas. Sometimes family size can have a bearing. If families are large, you are more likely to migrate. This has been pointed out by a study by Cohen. Sometimes caste also plays an important role. If you are from the lower caste, you might be more motivated to migrate. Because those who are from the lower caste, they face different kind of hostilities within the village. They face different kind of religious and civil disabilities. They will be persecuted. It becomes very difficult for them of subsistence. They will be denied different resources. So in such a scenario, lower caste people might be willing to migrate. R.C. Chandra also talks about the religious dimension. Some people would want to have a more cosmopolitan outlook. Rural areas might not be that cosmopolitan. Urban areas are more cosmopolitan. They're more accommodative. They welcome people from all walks of life. So these sections of population who would want to have religious freedom, they might migrate to urban areas. Political factors might also cause migration. In some places, we have sons of soil policy. That means if you are from that region, you should be given access. First access should be yours. If you are from Maharashtra, if you know the language Marathi, you have the first right to the different jobs in Maharashtra. If you are saying this, that means you are advocating son of the soil policy. Because of son of soil policy, people might be forced to migrate. For example, if people from UP Bihar have migrated to Bombay, now all of a sudden a political leader comes and says jobs in Maharashtra are only for Marathis. Others should not be given jobs. Others should be denied jobs. So in that scenario, the people who have already migrated to Maharashtra, they might have to return. So they are forced to migrate back to their place of origin. So political factors can also be there. We can look at different factors of migration as push and pull factors as well. Some factors push people to migrate out. Some factors attract people to migrate. For example, if poverty is there in rural area, if productivity is not that much in a particular area, if there is high level of unemployment in an area, if all the natural resources have been exhausted in an area, if an area is more prone to natural calamities, people might get pushed out. They would not want to stay in a region which has all these challenges. Certain areas can be there which will attract people, which will pull people. For example, if an area, if a particular region has better employment opportunities, if it provides higher wages, if the working conditions are ensured, if better working conditions are ensured, if better amenities, healthcare, education, these facilities are there, people might be attracted to go to these places. So migration can also be looked at from this perspective, push factors or pull factors. Indian sociologist Ashish Bose talks about another type of factors, push and back factors. What do we mean by push and back factors? Push back factor means it might happen that people are going to an urban area, from rural area to urban area to migrate. But once they're in urban area, they're realizing that there is not much employment opportunity. They got attracted in the first place, but then when they land up over there, they realize that it is not that lucrative. Marginal employment is just there, unemployment is quite prevalent. So in such a scenario, they might again return to their native. They might again return to native places. So they are pushed back. So it also becomes a deterrent for rural population to migrate. So these factors are called pushback factors. And in case of India, it has been observed that many times high proportion of people they return to their place of origin within 1 year of their migration. So they migrated from rural to urban area, but within 1 year of their migration, they are again back. It is also referred to as turnover migration. So these are the different factors which lead to migration. Now, so these are the different factors causing migration. Now, what are the consequences of migration? What are the impacts of migration? Now, because of migration, labor productivity of a region can get impacted. In a particular area, if people start migrating out, there will be a shortage of labor. It can lead to, or it can incentivize usage of different machinery or carrying out different activities. So less number of people will carry out the production roles here. So if less number of people are carrying out those production roles, then labor productivity will increase. So if people migrate out from a region, labor productivity increases. Migrants, they provide financial assistance to the families, back home. They migrated from one place to another, so they send money back to those regions. In case of India, annual remittance is $69 billion. So those who are the NRIs or those who have settled outside India, they send $69 billion back to India. So you can quantum. Migrants, they can also spread knowledge and innovation. They act as value disseminators. From rural areas, people can go to urban areas. At different points of time, they might come back to rural areas. And when they're coming back to rural areas, they might spread new knowledge, they might spread innovation. They might spread new values as well. Values in urban areas, values in rural areas can be different. We have already seen this. But sometimes Migration can also negatively impact the areas from which people are migrating out. If people migrated out from an area, that particular area is losing out on talent. So resource drain is there. It can suffer from developmental disparity. And generally, the young people, they're the ones who will migrate. So who is going to add to the economic migration? So negative impact for the region from where people are migrating. Migration also has impact on age, sex, and occupational composition. Age, generally young people will migrate out. Sex, young people migrate from rural area. Rural migration, females migrate out. Occupational composition also gets altered. Young people are migrating out in search of certain jobs. And there is also an impact on fertility rates. Because of migration, the possibility of sexual relations also decreases, which can further decrease fertility rates. Male migration also has an impact on the family which is back home. The women, the children, they might be impacted. The women now have to take care of the household. There is no supporting hand. Sometimes they are also working in the agricultural sector. So they face dual burden. They're handling both domestic work as well as the work in the field. And they do not have any support system. So emotional stress can also be high. Apart from that, sometimes women are also subjected to sexual exploitation who are staying back. Apart from that, women now have to take care of the entire household. They are the ones who have to take the critical decisions for the household. So it makes their life a little different. Migrants, when they're migrating to a new area, they do not have those social relations, social contacts. Those things will not be there. They might have to migrate to a new state. So it makes them more vulnerable. There have been studies which point out that capitalist farmers, they prefer to employ migrant laborers in their farms because they are the ones who can be easily exploited. These migrant laborers, they're not local to the region. They will not fight back. They will not resist. So generally, they are the ones who are paid less as compared to the local laborers. So high chances of being exploited. They're more vulnerable. Migration also impacts politics. You might have observed how political equations are nowadays. Many times, when local political candidates, when they are standing for elections, they will mobilize people along these grounds. That these people are the migrants, we have to make policies against them. And this is something that is quite often there in the news. A new government comes into power and they put a new clause that if you are hiring laborers, these many people should be from the local communities. So anti-immigration stand is taken by many political parties, many political candidates. It helps them mobilize people in their support. Migrants will be small in number. They might not be that big a vote bank. Local people are the vote bank. So against the migrants, you can make some statement and you can garner votes. Also, migration can lead to cultural changes. You might have observed the metropolitan cities, how people from different regions of India are staying together in metropolitan cities. And since they are all staying together, there is interaction between people from different regions. It leads to creation of a composite culture. Cultural changes take place. Sometimes migration can lead to ethnic conflicts. We have seen that. Fight between Marathis and people from UP Bihar in Bombay. Fight between people from Maharashtra and those from South India in Bombay in 1960s. Fight between people of Assam and people of Bihar in Assam. So those kind of clashes on ethnic grounds we have seen. Migration can also have an impact on the mental health. It has been observed, some studies have pointed out that because of out-migration of men in Kerala, women have faced multiple issues, women have faced mental health issues. So at the level of mind also, impacts are there. So these are all the different possible consequences of migration. Increase in labor productivity, financial support is given, so country also gets benefited because of remittances, spread of knowledge, innovation can be there. The place from where people are migrating out, it might be at a loss. Fertility rates can get impacted, different aspects of population distribution can get impacted. Sometimes there can be added pressure on women and children who are left behind. Migrants, they are more vulnerable. Sometimes political candidates mobilize people against the migrants. Migration also leads to cultural changes. Composite cultures can form as a result of migration. Ethnic conflicts we have witnessed in India as a consequence of migration. Sometimes migration also leads to psychological impacts at the level of mind. So these are all the different consequences of migration. So we understood what is migration, we understood what are the different types of migration, we also understood what are some of the factors leading to migration and the consequences of migration. So this sums up our understanding of migration, and along with this, we'll also conclude our discussion on birth rate and death rate. So we started with the different theories of population growth, Malthusian theory, demographic transition theory. We looked at some of the important population pyramids. Then we understood the different concepts, components of population growth, birth, mortality, and migration. So this is it from my side when it comes to components of population growth. Thank you.